Do you think life is simpler as time evolves? For some, it can be more complicated when facing issues about health, estate plans, probate, long-term care, and more. That's why Attorney-CPA Joe Cordell hosts ElderTalk with TuckerAllen, providing intelligent answers for those thinking about their future. Here's Attorney-CPA Joe Cordell.
Welcome to another episode of ElderTalk. This week we have back a guest that has been very popular in the past. This is somebody who really understands the real estate market in the St. Louis metro area, and especially as it pertains to seniors. And this is really a crazy time, Jill, in a lot of ways. There's a crazy real estate market. We're going to start out talking about that with him. But there's also some very creative, innovative stuff going on right now that often is born out of tough economic times. So I think it's not that unusual to see opportunities appear that really are largely generated by necessity.
Right.
So we'll talk about some of those as well. You want to introduce properly our guest?
I would love to. We have Ted Gottlieb, a certified senior advisor, also a realtor. The list goes on. Welcome back, Ted.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Good.
Good to be here.
We should call this our TED Talks.
TED Talks,
you
yeah.
should. Somebody else, I think, grabbed that. But one of my domain names is talktoted.com. So, yeah, I try to play off it without getting myself into trouble.
Talktoted.com. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
There's Trust in TED. There's Talk to TED. I've got everything but TEDx, I believe.
Well, I can tell you that you are pretty popular online. I know that we were going to talk about this at the end, but it kind of fits in here. We mentioned before that you have these seminars that you do periodically, and you're not doing them right now. Is that correct?
Right. We put a hold on them. I started an organization called the Senior Learning Institute, and I get living all the time, but it's Senior Learning Institute. And the Senior Learning Institute, it almost functions like a nonprofit, but it's not. And someday I might go that route. But what it is an umbrella organization. I've got some companies that help sponsor it to help defer some of the cost of promoting it and holding these events. But it's really designed to provide information to seniors and their loved ones to help them make educated decisions. So it connects them with financial advisors and attorneys and move managers and case managers and care managers and all sorts of people that I've met in the 10 years that I've been working almost exclusively with seniors. So we've done these seminars, and we actually started in one municipality, Chesterfield, Missouri, and Chesterfield Parks and Rec wanted to do some programming, so they let us come in to do those with the promise that it wouldn't be an advertisement, that we're not going to be self-promoting, which we promised that we would not do. So we're in year 3 or year 4 with Chesterfield, and then I decided since those were going so well in Chesterfield, we went to another community called Sunset Hills, then we went to Ellisville, and then one other community. So we were in 4 different municipalities. Now we've cut it back to 3, but we're doing the same seminar 3 times a month. So we'll pick a topic on, one might be real estate, one might be estate planning, and we'll repeat that 3 times a month.
Online.
Well, they have been in person. Some of them were online at the beginning of the pandemic. And what I found is that not everybody still wants to come out yet. So
especially seniors,
yeah.
of course.
Right, yeah. So our attendance has really gone down, and it's at the point where we feel as though we're going to make a better impact if we have it online. So we're going back online. There are several that we did about a year or so ago that are available on the Senior Learning Institute website, and we're going to be doing more over the next 3 to 6 months, and we plan on going back live again in the spring. So we're going to let COVID do what it needs to do over the next couple of months. We're going to let winter set in, and then in the spring, probably in March, in the first or second week in March, we'll start back at live audiences.
So give us a quick sampling of topics.
Well, topics really range. As you know, my background is real estate, and so we'll have one on buying and selling, or actually selling real estate for the most amount you can get for it, and how we go about positioning that. And we talk about the whole process of preparing the property. But that's the only thing on real estate that we do. The other ones that we talk about might be financial and estate planning. We've had them on scams. We've had them on wellness. We've had them on how to pick a senior living community. We'll have one that focuses just on assisted living communities. We've had some on dementia. We've had some on hospice, variety of different topics. And I'm always going back into the well to find new ones. And there are folks who do similar things that I do as certified senior housing professionals. Is a designation that we have. It just so happens next week I'm going to a convention, and there are people who are also doing seminars in other parts of the country. So I'll borrow some of their content and see what they're doing, and also maybe integrate that into 2022.
Okay,
Yeah.
so good. So people who want to look up and find one of these events, where do they go?
SeniorLearningInstitute.com or STLSLI.com. It's a little easier, but it's the SeniorLearningInstitute.com.
All right, so let's talk, before we talk a little more specifically about retirement community housing and options like that, what's your read on the real estate market in St. Louis generally as it pertains to residential?
Well, as an attorney friend of mine would say, it depends, right? It really does. It depends on the market. All real estate is local, and then there's micro-local. So we have the St. Louis market, then we might have West County market, then we might have a different zip code market, then we have different neighborhoods within that community.
So it's going to vary?
It varies. There are some communities in this area and other areas that are just so hot and popular that no matter what time of year it is, if something goes on the market, it's going to attract a lot of attention. There are others that are just not going to. So in general, I'll give you a couple of examples. I had a property that I just listed. It was in the mid 400s. There's not much inventory on the market in this particular neighborhood. In the first 3 days, we had 17 showings. We had several contracts come in, and it sold well above list price. And the way we were able to negotiate it based on the strength of the market, it's definitely still a seller's market in my mind in most markets. We were able to have things like the appraisal contingency removed. We were able to have the financing contingency removed. It's a pretty rock-solid contract subject to inspections.
Would you say the hot spots in the St. Louis area would be, say, West County and also St. Charles County?
St. Charles County is hot. West County is hot, but then there's certain pockets. There's certain municipalities. I always think of places like Clayton and Kirkwood and Webster Groves. Always popular places. You put something on the market in Kirkwood and it attracts a lot of attention, even if it gets to the market. There are some other areas that might be unincorporated, or the schools are good but not the highest rated school districts based upon whoever is rating them. Then those may tend to be a little bit more of a level market. But it has been a seller's market for a while, and part of the problem is that a lot of the sellers that I have, whether they're selling to buy something else, to downsize or upsize, or to sell to go to a senior living community, the conversation is, I can very easily help you sell that house. I can make you homeless in about 30 days if you wish, but what are we going to do from there? So that's why we're very cautious and we have those conversations and make sure that we don't make them homeless. They need to have some place to go, and that's why, and maybe later we'll talk about some of the other options and creative ways that we've come up with and that we're marketing that can help people do that. But most importantly, I've got 3 people right now that are looking to buy something, and we're not going to list the house until after they buy it, and they're going to buy it for cash or non-contingent, unless they can afford to cover 2 mortgages, and that happens from time to time.
Right.
We're going to find something first, and then we're going to sell it because I know that I can get them out of there I can get a contract on their house within days.
What about someone that's thinking of going to a senior living community? Do you first make sure that you have all of that put in place before you put their house up for sale?
Absolutely. I've got several right now. I've got one gentleman who just moved, and he needed to move 2 years ago. Very isolated. He's fallen numerous times. He's not in the best of shape, but he refused to move. And he finally saw the light after laying on the floor for 13 hours. He's been laying on the fire people, the fire department knows him better than most of his neighbors do, and they know him by name. Okay, that's the relationship that he has with them. And he jokes about it. He's a very nice, jovial guy, but he will thrive going somewhere else. So he finally got the message that it was time for him to go. And he goes, well, when are we going to put it on the market? I said, the day I'm going to start marketing this property is after you leave.
Because of the possibility it could be sold.
It could be sold right away. I don't want to put him through it's already emotional enough for him to leave and go to this community that he's excited about going there, but he'd rather stay home, right? So,
But what if he needs the money in order to make the move? Do you commonly see that?
It happens from time to time. He's fortunate enough that he has enough, and we did the math, and he picked a certain community based upon how much he could afford with his pension and with his Social Security income. He knew that he can go to a certain community. Quite honestly, he didn't go to the right community in regard to the level of care that he needed, because he's paying $3,500 a month to go to a independent living community where he really needs assisted living, which is almost double that in cost. But he's doing it based upon the math. So, but I made sure that he understood that if he's not going to be successful in independent living, he can expect in the next 3 3 to 6 months, maybe even shorter, that he has to go to an assisted living community and spend twice as much. His money isn't going to go nearly as far. So that's why the sale of the house is so important.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to put him through the emotion of watching people come through this house, the potential of a developer buying this particular lot, which very well might be the case. But the way that I'm going to maximize his return, which is the most important thing, is I got to expose it to a couple different people first, then maybe expose it to the market depending upon how that goes. But I've got developers who are looking at this almost acre lot that's in a decent location.
It's an older home.
It's a 97-year-old home in a desirable little pocket that a developer could buy this lot, and let's just say it's a 4.25 lot, can buy this lot and put a $1.5 million home on it.
And you see a lot of that, particularly in nicer neighborhoods, but in a lot of neighborhoods where there are these ranches that they were called mid-century modern.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's built in the 50s, 60s maybe, 50s or 60s. And you have people who have lived there for decades, maybe from when the house was completed.
Yes.
So you look at next to them, these big houses that are the result of the previous house being torn down.
Sure.
And they're putting in these beautiful houses. So you know what lies ahead for that ranch. And that person, though, must be hanging on to it and still being relatively self-sufficient.
They're hanging on to it. I have one right now, and this is another interesting story, but she decided to move. Her husband passed away. They built the house, a very, very similar house to what you're talking about, in a very nice little area of Creve Coeur, great schools, very desirable location, but no one's done new construction in that area yet. Okay, so there is an infill in there, new McMansions in there. These are still beautiful homes on almost acre lots. And she was struggling with the idea of making the move, and she knew she needed to. And I had conversations with her 3 daughters on Zoom, and the daughters were great. And I complimented them on being so involved and having this wonderful relationship, which they did. I ultimately got the listing, and she said, well, I don't want to sell it yet. I'm not quite ready. I don't want to go out to Seattle until I take care of all these things here. I said, well, it's kind of overwhelming. She goes, yeah, it's overwhelming. She goes, I really don't want to be here. I said, well, you're allowed to give yourself permission to go and do what you want to do and go move out there,
right,
knowing that I'll take care of everything for you here. And we had a little back and forth about that conversation. And by the time we were done, she goes, you know what? I'm going. And within 30 days, she left.
And there is a lesson there. I see this too in my family. I bet, Jill, you know people who've done this as well. Is there maybe it's a generational thing where people who are in their 70s, especially 80s, certainly beyond, they tend to think they've got to do this stuff.
Right.
They have to be in control.
Yeah, I've got so much to do. I can't go visit you, or I can't move out there because I've got to take care of all these things. And as you just said, they don't have to take care of all those things. The people like you will take care of those things.
Well, and ironically, she's still taking control of those things. She's just doing it from the other coast. She's on it like you wouldn't believe. Check on the house, do this, do that. I forgot this. It's amazing how in control she is. But she released enough of it, and she said, this is the best thing I ever did. She's close to 2 of her 3 girls, and she's so excited to be there. And even though she's in a place where they actually had to isolate for a while because there was a COVID issue there, she was thrilled to be there.
Yeah.
And she's got the quality of life back that she wants, and she's not as sitting there and not as lonely as she was. And the house closes in 2 days, and she gets to take that money and go do her thing. Fortunately, she had enough saved and was able to rob Peter to pay Paul to make that move because there was a buy-in in that community that she went into, so she was able to make it work. But she's thrilled, and just having it feels good when you're able to give somebody the keys to the car and let them go, right? And that's exactly what we were able to do, and she's just thrilled that she did it, and we're thrilled that we're able to help advocate for her here.
What about her belongings? Because last time you were on the show, we talked a lot about decluttering, so I'm sure she couldn't take everything with her.
She took a lot with her, and I had one of my favorite move management companies went and met with her and helped her tag what she was going to go, and a couple other pieces went to her girls. And then we ended up having an estate sale in the property, which we all arranged, and then we had the house cleaned out, and then we listed the house and had the house marketed and ready to go.
When you're not doing a tear down or not selling it to a developer, often there is some updating that needs to occur. Or is it your philosophy, and I can understand this, where It's saying to the homeowner says, well, gee, can I just go ahead and sell this house? And you're looking at it and thinking, well, it's not been updated in about 25 years. Is it simpler to just go ahead and sell it and then let the new person do the updating? Or do you often advocate doing some of that before it's sold?
It depends upon how important the money is a lot of the times, or whether they want the hassle. I look at selling homes in three different ways. Okay, there's retail, which is it's updated, current. People walk in, they'll be wowed, and the pictures that we take are professional and they look awesome, and they have to have it, right? So that's retail. So if a house is worth $100,000, that's what you're selling it for or listing it for. Then you got wholesale, which is it really isn't worth fixing up. It needs so much time, effort, money, and the money's not as important to you. And then you let it go for almost 40 to 50 cents on the dollar.
As is.
That's harsh.
It's painful.
40 to 50 cents on the dollar?
Yep, 60 if you're lucky. Okay, so it's what the investor does is they come in, they have this math that they use, and they have this fuzzy math, and they know that they've got probably about a 25% holding cost and carry and selling commissions and profit, and then they take the fix off of that. So you're not getting anywhere close to what you would have. So let's just say the retail's 100 and the wholesale's 50. You've got that in between number, and I call that sub-retail. What I do there is I say, okay, we know the house needs work. We know that you don't want to do the work or can't afford to do the work. But instead of giving it to the investor who could potentially flip it and make a quick $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, let's market the house for someone who will be an owner-occupant who will move into it and fix it up over time. So that $100,000 house that needs $25,000 worth of work, you're selling it for $60,000, $65,000, $70,000, $75,000. Still selling it as is, more than likely, with the ability of the buyer to do an inspection, but you're saying we're not fixing anything. And that's, let's just say 75 cents on the dollar is a whole lot better than that 50 cents on the dollar. And that seems where it makes a lot of sense. We've been able to do that a lot.
So if you do it that way, then the owner doesn't have to worry about it passing an inspection. The new owner would have to make the upgrades for it to pass inspection. Is that correct?
Well, it depends on what inspection we're referring to. There are some municipalities that require inspections be done when a property is sold, even before it's even on the market. Like Ferguson, for instance, is the one municipality that I can think of that wants you to have an inspection before you even market the house. They want to make sure that everything's okay inside the house. There are other municipalities that say you need to have an inspection in the property before somebody else moves into it. Okay, so that's different because if you don't have a change of ownership or a change of occupancy, then you don't need that inspection. Or to sell it, you don't need that. But for the new owner to come in and live there, move their stuff in, it has to be inspected. So oftentimes when I'm in a municipality that is like that, like unincorporated St. Louis County, any home in unincorporated St. Louis County has to have an occupancy permit before the new people come in. I have my clients typically, I encourage them to do their inspections with the municipality up front, take that punch list that the municipality gives you, fix those items, get the occupancy inspection that you need and pass it so that when we go to market the property, we can say that the property has been inspected by and passed by St. Louis County. That means that the person who comes in to live there can live there, and also that's that same person who can fix up the property as time permits.
Right.
But there's certain things that are required that you just, the county's going to require that you do. And sometimes you open up a can of worms when the municipality comes out and they say the electrical panel's not right, the foundation's not right. These windows don't open. I have a house right now in unincorporated that has 17 windows, of which 17 don't open or stay open properly. Okay.
And that's a huge expense.
Right. So we marketed the house that it's passed St. Louis County occupancy inspection to date, excluding the windows, and we've ordered the parts for the windows because, of course, parts are hard to get, and they won't be until December. So when the new person comes in and we have that house under contract, they know that technically they should not be living in the house because they don't have occupancy inspection approved by unincorporated or St. Louis County, and the window parts are coming in and they'll be installed well after closing. We're going to prepay it. We're going to provide a lien waiver, and then people will be able to technically move in, but legally, probably not supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people don't want to have to deal with contractors. They don't want to have to make the phone calls to do the updating. Like, for example, if one of the big drawbacks on a house, and I'm thinking less about things passing inspection, I'm seeing the typical difference between, in your example, $100,000 and $80,000 may be that the bathrooms need to be updated, new countertops, maybe wallpaper needs to come off.
Yeah.
I mean, things like that.
Yeah,
that,
paneling.
it's not huge. It's not huge, and it could be done without great inconvenience. But some people just don't want to deal with it, and as a result, they end up with less money. But I get the point you made, and I'm wondering, a lot of people may not have. Whenever you say, well, it depends on how much they need the money, some people may think, well, of course people want as much money as they can get. But sometimes moving, the entire transaction is contingent on their having enough to put down at a new facility, for example. Those facilities that do require, a buy-in of some sort of front-end payment, or their next housing arrangement, whatever that might be. It may be that if they don't get $100,000 out of that house, they don't have the money to go do those things. So I can see where there are people who need to wring every dollar they can out of that house.
Well, that's the situation of this property that I referred to earlier with the gentleman who moved to an independent living community. He needs every dollar out of that house because if he does need to go into assisted living, which he probably will, we need to make sure that he has enough money. So when I go out and advocate for my seniors, we talk about how's it best to sell the house. I'm always thinking about their care and their legacy, and the money is critically important. Whether they need it or not, they want it for their legacy. And they'd much rather have it in somebody's pocket that they care about or donate or whatever it's going to be versus an investor. And I think we've talked about this before. I've been in situations where I've helped people get between $10,000 and $90,000 more to put in their pockets because I was there to negotiate between investors.
Right.
Okay, investors are there. They're lovely people, but they're business people, and the idea is more than likely to buy it for as little as possible. And I've seen many investors who will buy it for $100 and flip it to somebody else or assign it to somebody else for $120, walk away and just be very, very thrilled and let the next guy or gal deal with it. Happens all the time. So I've had communities refer to as-is buyers, investors, to say, I want you to move in. We need to do it quickly. I can get you cash for the house. You can move in. And it sounds very appealing. But what they're not necessarily saying is how much they're leaving on the table. So I have said to communities, I think that's kind of short-sighted because one of the things that you're trying to do is not only get people to come and move into your community, but you want them to stay. So if I can put $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $90,000 more in their pockets, do you think they'll stay here a little bit longer and can afford to stay here a little bit longer? Yeah, absolutely. So think about the retention side of these things, and are you doing the right thing by being short-sighted to give them someone who's going to give them less for their house? And I say no.
Yeah, and it's good to have somebody who understands the underlying dynamics on both sides of the table, because when you understand what the priorities are, you can negotiate much better. Let me mention one thing that I think is huge, and I think is threatening to change dramatically the entire real estate industry. And I want to get your thoughts. And it may be hard for you to be disinterested on this topic, but iBuyers are coming along and they're buying an increasingly large share of the market. And separate from iBuyers, when I use iBuyers, I'm still thinking about people that are intermediaries. Their intention is to, if they do buy something, they intend to very quickly transfer it, unload it to someone else. Then you have this group of institutional investors who are buying and holding, like BlackRock. They have billions of dollars. They're buying up homes in America. And their intention is to hold them and rent them out for a period of time. Over time, their intention would be to sell them. But this is another opportunity that exists in a lot of cities where they literally have their pockets bulging with money that investors have given them. Remember, everyone's hungry for yield right now. They're desperate for ways to make something beyond 1.5% through a savings account. And it's very hard to find that. So they've put their money in some seemingly unlikely places. So all of this wealth that's out there, despite COVID, there's a lot of wealth. They're pouring that money, a lot of them, into these home buying companies. And these companies are going out there not being real picky about what they buy. it's not practical. When your goal is to buy 10,000 homes in a month, you can't have people go through and have inspections. In many cases, they're pulling up out front. They're pulling a couple of documents from the city or the Recorder of Deeds or something and looking at them and making an offer. So that is one pool, one avenue that some people will have. And then the other avenue I mentioned before that was iBuyers, and I'll explain that a little further, then I'll let you take over and talk more about this. But that first category I mentioned called iBuyers, that would include Zillow most prominently, but Open Door, Redfin, I think is one of those. So these are tech companies that have raised a lot of money, and their deal is that they often have realtors they use. Some are just purely a quick buy. You call them today and say, what will you give me for my home? In like 24 hours, they give you a number. They're ready to pay you all cash just like that. And their numbers are, I'm told, pretty aggressive, meaning favorable to you. Obviously, it's less, as you were saying. Anytime you sell to somebody who's an investor, you're going to get less, of course. But their profitability they're walking very close to the line. The records that for their first 6 months of this year, I think it was Zillow, was showing like a 3% profit on these homes. So in other words, you have to be pretty surgical to not lose your shirt if you're a company like Zillow, and across America, you're giving offers of like $300,000, for example, for a home. Well, what if you're wrong by $60,000, which you would think that would be very easy to be wrong on? But amazingly, they seem to come. If they try to get too hungry and give too low offers, they don't get the house, right? So they would like to get the house. So they cut it pretty close, and I'm actually amazed at how they do this, because it could go badly wrong if you decide I really am going to be aggressive and get these homes, because buying and selling houses, as you know, your investors, I mean, it can swing, and so you err on the side of safety, but there's not a big cushion of safety based on these records I've seen from Zillow. So Zillow, Redfin, Open Door, these are companies who will buy your house. If you don't, you can have their realtor sell it for you, but if not, then they'll go ahead and buy your house. So this is another big whale in the market. Let me hand it to you and tell me what you think about this this new development in the real estate market.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see what's going on with that. And I know a lot of people have made out fairly well in regard to selling their homes that way. I've experienced as well with another company that does something very, very similar to it, but their model's a little bit different in that they are purchasing the house for pretty much, I'd say, at or about fair market value. They have automated valuation tools which they use to determine the value of the property. Sometimes they will consult with us and ask us what we think the value of the property is. I think they need to do that maybe even a little bit more. So because I think we know the areas in St. Louis better than they may know the areas in St. Louis.
Better than their algorithm.
Correct. So we'll keep an eye on that, and if we think a number is really, really high, we'll let them know. But those offers tend to be contingent upon inspections. Now, what's interesting, too, is that the company that we're helping do this, they have it sometimes contingent upon inspections, almost always, now that I think about it, but they're waiving appraisal contingencies. And the offers are I'd say, aggressive. What a lot of people are doing is they're trying to tap the equity out of their house in a time when values are high, and they're using this as a way to do a variety of different things. One of them is to fund the purchase of their next home and be able to be more competitive when they're buying their next home. So let's say theoretically they sell their home to this organization. We help facilitate that. They get $300,000 worth of equity out of the house. They decide they're going to go buy another house. And in order to be competitive in the hot spring market that's coming up, they may waive their financing contingency. They may take the $300,000 that they got from the equity of their house, combine it with some other equity that they have, and buy it for cash. So they're not competing as a person who's going to be financing the home. They're a cash buyer. They may also choose to then waive their inspection or waive the appraisal. That makes them more attractive as a buyer down the road. So there are people who are using the money that way. What's cool about what these folks are doing is that they're then leasing the house back to the homeowner that they purchased the home from. So imagine if you're a senior that needs to tap the equity of the house, or you don't even need to tap it, but you don't want to deal with the maintenance any longer, and you like the idea of taking the money and doing something else with it. As long as you're willing to lease the house back, and ideally the number that they want is 6 months. Sometimes they'll just do an outright purchase, and you don't have to do that. But the typical model is 6 months, lease the house back from us at a competitive rate. You don't pay taxes any longer. You don't pay insurance on the exterior of the property any longer. You don't deal with the maintenance any longer. They take the new owner takes care of that.
I can see where that would be rather attractive.
It really is. Well, just think about the fact that if a lot of your equity is tied up in your house, and you have one spouse that needs to go to assisted living, you don't really have a lot of liquidity there. You take that out of the house, you'll actually end up putting more in your pockets than if you did a reverse mortgage, for instance, or if you try to do a home equity line of credit. So there's a lot of upside to it.
Right.
Is there a downside to it? Right now, I don't see it, because if they're waiving appraisals, the only thing that's really impacting things might be the inspection. So you mentioned the sight unseen purchase part of this. They are buying it sight unseen. So their contingency is an inspection contingency. They are normally just doing building inspections. I have yet to see
You mean
them.
the investors are buying sight unseen?
The investors
Okay.
buying sight unseen. So they're doing inspections. They'll hire a building inspector to go out and do a building inspection, an independent third party to go out and look at things. I have one situation right now, one of the properties that they bought, and it wasn't disclosed by the seller because the seller is basically selling as is. There's no
Sure.
seller's disclosure statements. And it just so happened that this had a very significant foundation problem, not on one wall, but 4 walls. So let's just say the company offered $100,000 for this house, and then once they saw what the repair cost was for the foundation, plus the stigma that goes along with that, their offer came back and readjusted it at a lower number, which both parties agreed upon. If the investor who's buying this home is going to keep this home as a rental property and a part of a rental pool, which is what their expectations or their short-term expectations are, they don't necessarily think as much about the retail side of this thing. As long as their nut is being met with their monthly lease amount and there's a little bit of profit in there and the house is theoretically gaining value, that's their model. So I can see them buying hundreds, if not thousands, of properties and eventually selling those off when the time is right. But it's probably going to be years down the road. So it's a unique thing, and they're very, very active. And there are a lot of people who are very, very interested in it. And it's all full disclosure, which is really, really necessary. Everything's above board. They see where the numbers are. They know where the numbers are coming from. The contracts we're using the typical contracts that are provided by the local association of realtors, and it's been working well.
So I could see how this is more attractive than the reverse mortgages. The reverse mortgage idea, which we've talked about on this show several times.
With the Better Business Bureau,
Yeah.
Don O'Brien, right.
And there are lots of consumer protections with that, which I guess in the absence of these, there would be exploitation. But the result, though, is that there are so many limitations on how much money you can take out. You have to go through counseling in order to have a federally approved loan, which is what anybody would want. Then there are lots of conditions. And at the end of the day, by the time you've met all these conditions, including the percent that you can borrow against on your house, because remember, the company lending to you doesn't know how long you're going to live. So they're making a bet. It's an actuarial bet. And
Right.
in order for that to be safe, they have to leave equity in there. They can't afford to let you pull out all your equity. So the reverse mortgage is never a way for you to fully tap all your equity. So there's lots of limitations to it. And as a result, it never really excited me too much. And then when you mentioned this, just before we went on the air, we talked briefly about this. And it does make sense to me where people, when they're older, what they really want to do is stay in their house. Well, they're guaranteed the right to stay in their house. They have a lease that's, I assume they can make it renewable. So they can have an automatically renewable lease, perhaps adjusted for inflation or something. But the point is it'd be a renewable lease. So they know they can stay in their house. And they get all their equity out.
And they, like you said, they don't have to pay real estate taxes any longer, homeowners insurance.
Right. They pay a commission to the real estate firm for the transaction like they would if they normally sold it anyway.
If they sold it anywhere.
It's actually slightly below what's typical in the St. Louis marketplace, so there's a little bit of savings there. But you think about, the other side of this, the flip side of this is that if they don't sell the house and they don't maintain the house, the value of the home tends to decrease over a period of time. Things are not being looked after. The utility, the furnace, the air conditioning system, the plumbing systems, leaks, roofs, everything else. There's been many situations where people have left a lot on the table because they didn't maintain the house over years. So this takes all that off the plate. They're no longer the owner anymore. So the timing happens to be good right now, just based upon the lack of inventory on the market and the fact that the values of properties are still high.
Well, but isn't, though, there a competitive, I'll use the word threat, to the extent that you have an affiliation with some more local companies who are trying to render this service? And I can see how having somebody local who's the buyer of the home, they have more local reputation at stake, et cetera. And there is going to be this ongoing relationship. It's a landlord-tenant relationship. It's not simply it's not a buyer-seller relationship, though it is at the start, because you sell your home to this company and they in turn become the landlord. You're the tenant, so you have a contract that in which they agree to maintain the property in a way that you don't have to worry about doing that anymore. I get that. But what about when these guys come in town from like BlackRock and they, I'm guessing they're mentioning that if they're buying these houses with the intention of holding them, surely they're saying to the people in the house, look, we're happy to lease this back to you. Is that the primary competitor to local companies that are trying to do this?
I would, it's a combination of both. First of all, I don't know a lot of local companies that are doing it. The people that we're working with are out of town as well. Okay, and they have a property management company that they're using that's going to act as the property manager, and it's just going to be seamless the way that we're able to tell. So,
well, talk about this company.
Well, the company that we're working with, and we have a website that we put together called nopressuresale.com, and it's marketing this product. The people behind it is a company called Truehold. And
they're in Chicago?
I believe they're in New York. They're based out of New York.
Okay.
So they have investor money too.
They have investor money, and they're in a significantly they're in a growth phase of their business, and they're buying a lot of property right now. So they have investors that they need to satisfy, and part of their model is to buy properties and lease them back. That's their primary thing that they're trying to do. One of the owners of it is a certified senior advisor, and we kind of connected that way. Their initial contact came through my partner, Dennis Norman, who's one of the broker owners of More Realtors. And we sat down and got together, and we've put some proprietary software together and a variety of different vehicles together to make this a pretty seamless process. And we're constantly tweaking it, and it's been working really, really well. So we've got 3 of us here in town that are really administering this. So oftentimes the contact comes directly through Truehold. Truehold reaches out to us. We put the paperwork together. We present that to the seller of the property. We facilitate all of that. We answer their questions, and then we help coordinate things. And closing, 30 days, maybe even sooner than that, based upon the folks' needs.
And it's all cash.
It's all cash, not contingent upon financing, and most have not been contingent upon appraisal. That may change over time as the market shifts a little bit, but they've been willing to theoretically pay more than appraised value on a lot of these properties. The only contingency has been inspections that I've seen so far.
What has been your experience with seniors, with their response to investors? Because I know I've come across a lot that don't trust investors. They think, okay, they're not going to give me any money and I'm not going to get anything for my home. Have you come across that?
Yeah,
there is some of that reputation out there.
Oh yeah. Well, heck, I used to be one of them. But I wasn't. The way I joke about it is that I wasn't ripping off little old ladies. I was helping banks. Okay, because a lot of times when I was doing it in 2003 to 2006, 2007, the banks were trying to liquidate their inventory, and they were selling property at what one might think would be at or below market value just to get it off the books. And we would take it and we'd flip it, and we'd make our income on the flip on selling it to somebody else.
Yeah, they didn't want to own those houses. They foreclosed because they didn't have any choice.
Right. So we took those off the books. So we were helping the banks, and we were able to earn a living doing that. What I find that when it comes to the folks that are buying the distressed houses today, the money that's not being paid for the property is coming out of the pockets of the seniors. That's my mindset.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan of selling to investors, but when I do, and there are some properties that do deserve to be sold that way, when I do sell that way, I bring in 3 or 4 or 5 of the investors that I know will close, that I know won't flip it, and that I know will pay more than others, and I bring them in and I have them compete against one another, and was that $10,000 to $90,000 number that I gave before that I was able to negotiate. They all want to buy it for as little as possible, and I always describe them, these are all very, very nice people, but they're business people.
They're wanting to make a profit.
They're wanting to make a profit and a very large profit. And I guess that's the American way, right? But as a fiduciary, and I see myself as that as a certified senior advisor, my goal is to maximize the return. So the investor will say to me, well, how much do they want for it? Joe, how much do they want for it? And I'll say as much as they can possibly get. And they'll say, well, no, seriously, how much, what do I need to offer? I said, it's not what you need to offer, it's how much you're willing to pay. I said, my goal is to get my folks as much money as I possibly can because they need it for their care or their legacy. If I had a tattoo, it would probably say care and legacy on it, right? Because I say it so many times. But that's really what it's all about. And eventually I find somebody who's willing to pay a reasonable price that my sellers are willing to accept. And I have a feel for what that's going to be because we have that conversation up front so that we know that we're being realistic about this.
Right.
And they'll ask me what it's worth and I'll tell them what I think it's worth. And it all goes back to the old schooling when I was buying property myself. How much is it worth? What's my cost to carry it? What's it going to cost to fix it? What's the profit need to be? And I have, very simple math in my head, and it tells me how much that property is worth. And 9.5 times out of 10, that's where it comes in at. When it's in a very aggressive market, people are willing to overpay for it to an extent. But when things start to tighten up, then it becomes a little bit more challenging.
But this deal, though, is different because this deal is predicated on a willingness to pay market price for the house.
I think it's top dollar right now, quite honestly. We look at some of the prices that they're willing to pay on homes and we're kind of scratching our heads. It's higher than what we would pay.
And the reason it makes sense, though, to do that, whether it's Truehold or whether it's Zillow, is that they know in this case that they have a tenant who's going to pay a fair market rental for it. So they will have income from the property, and they'll have somebody who's going to respect the property. So I can see how it's in their interest to pay more when they know that they're getting that person, just like they insist on at least 6 months. That's a good sign. And I would understand if they insisted on at least a year because then they know that somebody who cares about the house is going to be there for a period of time.
They already have that emotional attachment to the property.
Sure. Yeah, the question is that after that 6-month period of time or whatever that lease period is someone going to lease it for that same amount or more? Are you going to cover your nut? Or how do you handle that? So that's where the risk comes in. That's where the speculation is. But smarter men than I am figuring that out, I guess.
So, and I assume then that this rent, so it's a sell and a lease back, so to speak. And so the lease back would probably give some assurances regarding option of renewal, right?
I would think so. I've read their contract. I've scanned it. Let's put it that way. When we submit the paperwork to the potential seller, to the seller of the house, it has a copy of the contract of what the lease contract will look like. It's not all filled in, but it's the basic form that's going to be used. And they pre-negotiate how much that amount is going to be. And normally they pre-negotiate how long minimally they're going to be there. I've seen some that there's no lease back at all. I've seen some that have been 6 months. I've seen some that have been a year. But that's something that they negotiate with the investor. And I have to assume that there's the ability of leasing it back. I've got a person right now who wants to buy but can't buy right now because of credit issues. She's been in the house for a while, and the person who's wanting to sell the house says, yeah, she can stay if she wants, and the new owners need to let her stay. That's great. So I've approached this company and said, hey, would you be willing to buy this house and at least let her rent it for at least the next year or two and then consider selling it to her when she's able to buy? And that's something that I think they are considering.
One other thing I wanted to touch on, too, is that apparently now there are companies who are they're building to rent. So in other words, used to, you go into this development and they have these model homes and you go into these model homes and they show you things that they hope you'll decide that you're going to buy from them. Now what they do is they have the same thing, same setup, and they show you model homes, and you pick one out, and their intention is for you to simply sign a lease that you're going to lease it from them when they build it for you. And they'll do like a 10-year lease or a 15-year lease. In other words, it's taking the idea of having a home and it's turning it upside down. It's no longer about ownership from this perspective. It's about you're wanting to rent it for a long period of time, and that this idea of the economy today is ownership's not important. All that's important is your ability to use something. So this is a mentality that may sound odd to those of us who are over 60, but I think to many people who are under 30, they're saying, well, of course, that's the reason we have Uber and these things. You just need something you can use. You don't need to own it. Well, like Airbnb.
Yeah, well, let's hope that doesn't catch on.
Yeah.
I know. It's scary, isn't it?
It really is.
It's scary, but this is I was reading about this in the Wall Street Journal. These are several large companies now that's their pitch.
That goes against the American dream. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I wonder in general, when you think about it, when times were tough in the real estate business and people had land and they were going to build, instead of building condos, they built apartments. But eventually, I think they will convert those apartments into condos. And I'm wondering whether somewhere down the road, they will in turn convert these rentals into homes for sale.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And the mentality today, I think with young people, they move quite often. And I think it's very different than, say my generation, your generation, where we more stay put. Except for you. You've moved several times, right?
Not a whole lot, but yeah, more than most.
Right.
I assume you've purchased wherever you moved to.
Yeah, three of the places, yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a mentality. I want to own. I like to own.
I do too.
I don't understand the idea of being happy renting, but I know that my kids think differently.
Well, but I look at the financial side of it too. When you look at it, let's say 15 years ago I bought a house for $300,000 and now I can sell it for $5,000, and I was able to take advantage of deducting my interest my interest on my mortgage. All of a sudden it makes buying look like a good thing. So I guess if the market's continues to appreciate, and obviously there's no guarantees as to where the market's going to go, because I've experienced markets where things have tanked. But right now, I'm looking okay in regard to the sale of a house when the time comes, and that's equity that I'm depending upon for retirement or purchase of something else. Mm-hmm. You don't get that when you rent.
No. And I think that this was true as of a decade ago at least, and that's that most of people's wealth was represented in the equity in their homes.
Yes.
Second was their 401k, but most of their wealth in America, the primary source of wealth was the value, the equity in their home. And, but we do have people who think very differently now. Youngest generation have a lot of many good ideas, I should say. But doubtlessly some will turn out to not be good ideas.
Yeah.
Each generation is smarter than the next, isn't it?
Yeah, in some ways. I'm sure that there's not a natural law there. I'm sure there's been a situation where the next generation was dumber than the...
Yeah, probably.
So time has flown. It's been 50 minutes. So as always, Ted, I love this topic. I love when you're on because I have this special interest in real estate. I've always been fascinated. My grandfather was just very interested in real estate. He invested in real estate and whatnot, and I learned kind of at his knee. And I, too, have this love of the subject of real estate, even at times when it doesn't fare well, when it's just kind of it's maintained a sort of a level sort of valuation. It's flat. I never saw it reverse much. I mean, 2009 was a weird thing. And even then, it popped back pretty quickly. By 2012, generally your head was above water by 2012. In a few places you weren't. A few places you weren't above water till, mid-teens. But anyway, it fascinates me. So when we have you on the show, I always like to talk about these things. And so sometimes we cover a wide range of topics as we did today. But I think what we accomplished is we let our viewers know that there are lots of options out there that you need to be aware of that you may want to check out. But at the end of the day, it's good to have somebody to sort of hold your hand, that sort of personal advisor. When I'm engaged in transactions of any importance, I have somebody beside me. Even though I'm knowledgeable in a lot of areas, I mean, obviously I'm a lawyer and a CPA, but still, when I'm engaged in transactions that are important, I want somebody beside me I trust. Usually that might be my lawyer. In some cases, it's a CPA. In some cases, it's just somebody whose business judgment I really appreciate. So I'm saying to you that if you don't have somebody that you have that relationship with in the real estate community, Ted, that's kind of what Ted does. Ted focuses on acting as a consultant. Yeah, sometimes he's a realtor as a broker. Sometimes he might represent the seller or represent the buyer, I should say. But other times he's simply working, like some of these situations you described today, you're working as a consultant. So you advise them. So maybe they're doing a deal with Truehold, or maybe they're doing a deal with a third party. But in any case, it's good to have somebody that you can turn to test what you've been told, to consider alternatives, et cetera. So that's the reason I like to use consultants. Anyway, so Ted is available, does that sort of thing. Again, I don't have a financial relationship with Ted, so I'm just telling you what I believe to be true, and I trust Ted. That's the reason he's on the show. So if you want to follow up with him, your website again is?
Well, I've got a couple, but trustinted.com is the main one. See?
Trust in Ted.
How about that? And then I do also have Talk to Ted, but I don't use that one very much. But trustinted.com and then the seniorlearninginstitute.com are the two main ones. And you had mentioned the consulting part of things, and I do a lot of that. Oftentimes, people consider me to be knowledgeable in the senior world. My real estate hat is rarely on at that point, and I go in and I act as a certified senior advisor, and I'm the consultant, and I make referrals and help facilitate conversations and help make things happen. And that's not something that I charge for. And people look at me and goes, well, that's free? I said, yeah, it's absolutely free, because what I'm doing is I'm supporting my referral partners. I'm top of mind to those referral partners who ultimately refer back to me. And ultimately, if there's a property to sell, I normally get to be able to make that happen and maximize my client's returns. So it's an interesting little business model that I have, but I do it because I think it's the right thing to do. And I don't collect referral fees or anything along those lines. So it's just the business model that I've gone with, and feel very, very good at night when I'm able to help somebody out and help them do what it is that they want to do.
I admire that business model.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So we will circle back in the future and talk more about senior housing in particular. We didn't focus as much on this show in community living, and we do like to talk to Ted a lot about that topic because that is an area of his expertise. So we'll have you on in the next 3-4 weeks or so, and we'll, if you're available, and we'll have you on, and we'll dedicate the show specifically to talk about senior living options, especially in the St. Louis area. Good. Another episode of Elder Talk. Till next time, take care.
You've been listening to Elder Talk with TuckerAllen, providing intelligent answers for those thinking about their future, with Attorney-CPA Joe Cordell. Sponsored by TuckerAllen, your estate and elder law advisors. For more information, visit TuckerAllen.com. Listen again next Saturday for another edition of Elder Talk with TuckerAllen. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements.